In my last video, I talked about the gargantuan freedom the video game medium can provide and how liberating that extreme can be. I decided that was far too positive and optimistic, so today I'm diving down to the other deepest extreme, into claustrophobia and constriction, into oppression and desperation, into surviving by the skin of your teeth and pulling your loved ones through with you. Welcome to ProEspresso Productions, and welcome to A Plague Tale: Innocence. I will say right off the bat, this game is quite literally a moving, breathing painting. It's art, so I won't be spoiling any major plot developments for you. This is definitely something you need to experience firsthand, so I'm just trying to give you the push to play it. It's available on the Xbox Game Pass on PC, which is how I played it, or you can buy it from pretty much any store. I know some of you might consider the footage on screen to be spoilerish, so it's possible to listen to this with the audio alone if you like. The French developer Asobo Studios really managed to knock it out of the park with A Plague Tale. They successfully delivered a mechanically sound, narratively driven single-player story that is stonkingly gorgeous to look at. This isn't a AAA game, but you would never be able to tell. Being a mostly narrative experience, there are no difficulty levels and the story is broken down into 25 chapters. There's a significant amount of game to get through here and the story is well paced throughout. Depending on how much time you take to stop and smell the flowers, it'll run you between 10 to 12 hours of concentrated game time. A Plague Tale tells the tale of a young daughter of a knight and her younger brother amidst the 100-year war between England and France. At the same time, the bubonic plague is tearing the population of both countries to shreds, spread by vermin of all varieties.
Oh look! Someone's drawn something on the doors!
Come back here! That means there are sick people in these houses. Don't touch anything.
Oh, they're not allowed to go outside.
It's more serious than that. It means that we could catch their illness, so stop running around.
Alright, sorry.
It's safe to say this was a pretty terrible time to live in, and some of the luckiest people were those of royalty and knighthood. The de Rune family just happens to be one of the latter. Our story begins with our main character, Amicia de Rune, and her father, Robert de Rune, out on a joyous hunt for dinner with their loyal hound Leon in tow. Obviously, the first thing you'll notice is the graphical presentation, which is ridiculously impressive for a game of this budget. It's not quite an indie game, it's somewhere in the middle, maybe a tier under the AAA. For now, the colour palette is warm and sun-soaked, and the light piercing through the trees is super pretty. This is a game of details, and I'm not talking horse testicles rockstar details, but details that lend more into complementing the story and its characters. The entirety of the first chapter, titled The de Rune Legacy, is a lengthy tutorial, but hold your sighs of exasperation for now. It's woven into events that unfold quite naturally. I'm using an Xbox One controller on the PC version, as the button prompts will show, and just in case anyone is curious, the PC version runs very, very well. I can get a steady 144 FPS on higher settings using an AMD Radeon RX 5700. Ultra settings do tank the FPS a bit, but I'm sure that's because some overuse of screen space ambient occlusion, or SSAO. Regardless, I couldn't honestly tell the difference between high and ultra anyway. So Amicia and her father venture onwards into this lush woodland, chatting light French accented banter as they go.
Hey, I'm trying to tell her something.
Such authority, Knight de Rune.
Go! And bring something back for once.
Oddly, the quality of the voice acting in this game gets progressively better as the chapters go on. In the first chapter, I did find them initially to be slightly stiff and stilted, like it was an English actor trying to put on a French accent.
Look at Leon! The Guyenne beast is in a hurry to fight it out.
Your beast thinks with its stomach, as usual.
Well, there's something you both have in common.
For all I know, that could be exactly the case, and the actor simply improved their accent with time, explaining that gradual improving quality. A Plague Tale has a light element of combat, with stealth being the greatly encouraged method of moving past threats. Both of these mechanics are shown during these sections, with the former demonstrated in a small challenge of apple murdering. Amicia possesses a sling that was gifted to her by her father years ago, and she can use it to sling rocks found all over the place at various targets. Under her father's fictional instruction to destroy some perfectly healthy apples, the player learns how to use Amicia's sling to great effect. This blatant disregard for fresh food in the opening could just be a simple, innocent tutorial, or I could get my over-analysis hat on for a second and overthink things as usual. I think this part says something about a rich family's ignorance to the value of food during a time of famine. Large portions of French people are dying of starvation, and this one well-off family of a knight can destroy perfectly edible food just for a bit of fun, blissfully unaware of how truly wasteful it is to those in great need. As the game progresses and the safety blanket of wealth and comfort that surrounds the de Rune family falls away, suddenly a few apples might be of much greater value than a moment of amusement. Amicia is unquestionably a child born into nobility with a silver spoon in her mouth, secluded from the harsh realities in an ivory tower. Realising this, it further accentuates the character arc Amicia goes through over the journey as she becomes conditioned to the harsh world. You can see that for yourself. Up to this point, the musical tones have been very light, playing on what I think is a soft lute in the background with a mostly light-hearted feel. However, after the apple slaying, Leon the doggo chases the scent of something nearby and sprints off in pursuit.
Goodness, what's up with him?
He must have smelled the rabbit. Come on, quickly.
There is a musical tone shift here that happens, and the score begins to gradually instill a sense of unease into the listener. This next section demonstrates the simple stealth mechanics, using the typical tall grass and flowers to become invisible to all but the closest of enemies. When not hidden, the detection system is nothing revolutionary, but it's functional all the same. If an enemy has you in their line of sight, you'll gradually build up an alert meter shown above their head, depending on how far you are away, of course. If the meter fills with white, the enemy will come to investigate your position. If you remain visible, the meter will start to fill with red over that white, and when the red is full, the enemy will become fully aggressive and you're most likely screwed. If a nearby enemy is off screen, the game does handily provide a glowing indicator at the edge of the screen in their direction. That's the long and short of the stealth mechanics anyhow. There's a plethora of tools accrued along the way that will allow you to manipulate the world in some interesting ways, but we'll get to them in due time. As for now, Amicia uses stealth to sneak up on a boar, hopefully bagging a scrumptious feast for all on the Darun estate. Fortunately for the boar, it seems one stone wasn't enough and he decides to nope the hell out of this situation, with Leon hot on his heels and Amicia not far behind. It's here that A Plague Tale truly makes a huge and dramatic shift to the dark and ominous, and it hits like a slap in the face. The environment turns slimy and muddy, the light starts to dwindle and the soundtrack continues building a foreboding feeling of dread. The idyllic scenery and the pleasant family banter was just too good to last, wasn't it? The tone gets relentlessly darker from here, and contrary to the quaint countryside aesthetic, 95% of this game is dark and oppressive as hell. I warn you now, this is not for the faint of heart. My warning may prompt you to start wondering if Leon is going to be okay, and, well, I hate to say it, but no. Leon will not be okay. After trudging through the sludge and mud, you'll find both the boar and Leon. The boar, decimated, dead and devoured. What the hell could tear a boar to pieces in a matter of seconds?
The trees. What did that? Leon, come here! It's the boar. But how? Leon couldn't have done that. Leon, come here! Leon!
Sadly, Leon falls to the same fate. Although mercifully it isn't too graphic of a death, I'm not going to show it here because doggos are such good boys and it's difficult to watch, digitally animated or not. This unknown force is clearly one to be reckoned with, and naturally Amicia and Robert Darun retreat back to their estate immediately. It's time to explore the other Darun child and their relationship with Amicia. Hugo Darun is 5 years old, 10 years younger than Amicia, and he's been in quarantine in an isolated wing of the Darun estate since a very young age. Consequently, Amicia and Hugo have rarely, if ever, properly interacted. Their mother, Beatrice Darun, has taken it upon herself to be Hugo's sole carer, isolating herself alongside him, working tirelessly to cure whatever affliction Hugo was born with. This of course means that Amicia's relationship with her mother has degraded to a threadbare level in the 5 years since Hugo was born. Amicia is instructed by her father to inform Beatrice about what has just happened while he organises a hunt to slay the beast, or beasts, that lurk in that black pit. Mourning the loss of her faithful pet, she wanders up to the isolated wing and attempts to spill the beans to her mother on what just happened. Before anything of real meaning can be communicated, however, a storm of horses' hooves are heard just outside and chaos erupts onto the Darun estate.
But it's true. Leon was lying there on the ground, and then he was...
Shh. You are to stay here with your brother.
No one expects the French Inquisition. In the real world, the French Inquisition was established to combat heresy and religious dissent among the population. They do play a similar role in A Plague Tale, but the lens of which the Inquisition identifies its heresy is certainly in questionable focus for our poor young protagonists. Beatrice rapidly instructs Amicia to stay with her brother and take care of him, stating after all these years that he is not contagious at all. Why would this cloaked secrecy then, Beatrice? Is it related to the sudden, uninvited arrival of the Inquisition? These are all questions that do have answers, but ones I will not spoil for you in this video. Seriously, play the damn game, it's fantastic. Amicia and Hugo have time for a timid greeting before the pleasantries are cut short by the violence outside. The Inquisition soldiers start violently interrogating anyone they can find. Servants, cooks, maids, and even Robert Darun himself. but not before he slays 2 of their soldiers prior to being apprehended.
He killed 2 of our men!
What a unit. What are these questions that they have to ask so desperately? Well, where is Hugo de Rune? Their interrogator is a massive hulk of a man identified as Nicholas. He's got this special evil armour on, so that must mean he's the final boss, right? But no one gives Hugo up. Not a single soul. Robert defies the Inquisition's violent methods to the final moment, when they ruthlessly cut him down on his own land, all the while Amicia watches from a distant window.
I won't ask again. Where is your son?
In good hands.
Search the house.
Their hunt for Hugo is officially on, and if the children don't get the hell out of there, the hunters will find their prey. I know the moment is tense, but can we just stop and appreciate the environmental detail here? I've made an effort to record in a higher bitrate just for this game, so the design can be appreciated in higher quality, although YouTube compression will absolutely potato the footage anyway. Seriously though, the entire game is this good. It must have taken the modelers untold hours to create all the models for this game. Good job to the entire studio on the visuals. They really are impressive through the entire experience. Bravo. Through complete and utter blind serendipity, Amicia and Hugo somehow avoid every single guard on their way out. It is a bitter reminder of the pecking order around here though, watching everyone else refuse to give away your location while they pay for their undying loyalty with their own blood. The de Rune family is absolutely top priority here, even above their own lives. Many die to save the children, and it throws things into a sharp perspective.
I've worked here all my life. They're like family to me. You'll get nothing out of me. Go to hell.
Oh yeah? You first!
It's really quite brutal, and you, as the player, can't help but feel gratitude towards these fictional pixel people you've barely seen before. Perhaps even more luckily, the children manage to rendezvous with their mother, and the game gives you a chance to learn some more mechanics of gameplay during your escape from the estate, via these luscious gardens. The basic sling and stealth mechanics have already been introduced, but there's a catch to slinging your sharp, shiny stones slyly at suspecting saboteurs. The sling is loud as hell, making a whip-like crack with every selectively spherical pebble propelled. Our alternative then is to simply lob the stones by hand. Now this doesn't contain enough force to cause any actual damage, but it can be useful for making auditory distractions when hitting metallic objects that can emit a good clang.
What was that noise?
This is a huge part of the evasion-oriented gameplay, and can save Amicia a lot of hassle when dealing with these Inquisition zealots. Luckily for us, they're dense enough to go right over to the source of the noise, allowing ample time to cross their original position and reach relative safety. Amicia can also carry 1 clay pot with her at a time, offering a one-time source of distraction without needing a clangy object to hit with a stone. Another mechanic that's introduced here but is rarely used in the game is being able to ask Hugo to wait in a location while you go off and do whatever by yourself. I'm not sure why this is even a thing, as when you get too far away from Hugo, he starts to panic. I mean, he is only 5 years old. More so, holding his hand as you go doesn't even slow your movement speed at all, and he's very good at not getting caught on world geometry. There's really very little reason not to have him with you all the time, apart from very specific puzzle requirements. For example, Hugo can naturally squeeze through tiny holes and open locked doors and windows from the other side. Not only is this quite handy, but it provides some really tense moments where you can't protect him and you just have to trust in his ability to get shit done. It's a nice dynamic between the siblings, honestly, and there's times where Hugo will need help from Amicia when climbing over ledges that are too big for his little legs. During your escape through the gardens, you'll start to see that Hugo keeps having these head pains that are no doubt related to his mysterious illness. I do feel bad for the little guy, but there will be no spoilers here. The trio finally approach the edge of the gardens and relative safety is in sight, but not before the earth-quaking footsteps of Nicholas approach. This persistent bastard has caught up to them at last. Beatrice does the only thing her mother could do here and stall him for time while the children make a desperate escape, shouting to Amicia to find a doctor, Laurentius, who can help Hugo's illness. With the Inquisition now immediately behind them, the only option is to run, and fast.
Don't stop! They're right behind us! Straight on! Very straight on!
Where are we going?
Just keep running!
Amicia, ilan ko ba ganito, Mommy?
We can't let them catch us!
As the Inquisition soldiers lob their spears, hurtling through the air, smashing into the dirt and trees, the ground quakes once more. Only this time, it isn't an armour-clad Frenchman causing it. What is presumably the same beast that claimed poor Leon begins rupturing the earth, imbuing anarchy into the soldiers' ranks as it swallows them whole, one by one, into the murky earth. This whole escape scene from the estate is bloody brilliant, by the way, I just have to say. Like the warm glow of the soldiers' lanterns contrasted against the progressively dimming light is just so aesthetically pleasing to me. Light and dark play a huge role in the playtale overall, as we'll soon find out, so it must have been really important to get this right for Asobo Studios. The fierce foot chase is concluded by Amicia and Hugo plunging themselves into the chilly river on the edge of the estate, where it carries them downstream to the border of a nearby town. This is the point where I'll stop being hyper-specific about story details and focus more on the characters, the mechanics, and some of the world design and aesthetic. To get things started, is that not the best looking wet cloth you have ever seen in your life? I also noted that Amicia's hair has fallen out of that neat bun she had before. Details, people. As Amicia and Hugo explore the village, they start to see what's going on outside of their sheltered and fully catered estate. Plague is everywhere, the air is thick with it, the streets are abandoned and people are hostile to one another. The atmosphere is constantly oppressive and every inch that you travel feels so threatening, but this feeling is so compelling. It's sort of like morbid curiosity where even though there's some pretty vile things going on, you can't stop yourself. Some of the scenes in this game are so stupidly tense that I would find myself with an unnecessarily tight grip on my poor little controller. The children eventually run into a crazed group of vigilante citizens who are entirely delusional, believing them to be the cause of the plague and giving chase to the siblings with some serious harmful intent. This second chapter is one of particular gravity for Amicia as it delivers a moment where she has no choice but to use lethal force to keep Hugo from harm, taking a man's life in the process. It's at this point that both Hugo and Amicia start to truly realise that survival is fucking ugly.
Hugo! I shouldn't have shouted! Please listen to me! No! I'm sorry! No! Let him go!
So that's where you were.
No! Wait, we just want to leave!
You will leave, yes, and never come back.
Please, no! I didn't want to.
Amicia! Amicia!
Hugo! I'm coming!
She will have to make choices that present no clear answer, and any moral high ground quickly crumbles into obscurity and endless grey. There are many moments like this, where every part of you just wants to find another way, a more peaceful solution with no suffering or loss. There will be times when you hate yourself for the actions you performed, but if you choose not to, the only alternative is death. And death is not an option. Not only in a gameplay sense, but in the narrative sense too. Now, I am not a father. I've never had kids, never plan to have kids, but god damn it, I came to care for little Hugo Darun almost instantly. If anything happened to this kid, I would have to go on a genocidal killing spree and entire nations would be erased. This kid is an absolute beacon of innocence, and even amidst the darkness and decay that envelop the majority of A Plague Tale, he persists as that faint flame, always burning.
Oh, a necklace.
It's a rosary.
What's it for?
Praying.
Can I use it to talk to Mommy and Daddy?
We'll do it together.
Oh, they've broken everything.
What's going on here?
Perhaps they're building bigger beds?
I don't think that's it.
Flowers. They're so pretty. They're carnations. We had some in my herbarium, but those ones are prettier.
Hugo, we have to keep moving.
Wait, come here.
What?
It will protect you, and is pretty too.
Oh. All right.
Now we can go.
Thank you, Hugo.
You're welcome.
Somehow he always finds the silver lining in everything, and he doesn't wish harm on a single living soul. I mean, the subtitle of the game is Innocence after all, so it seems they nailed that entirely. You guys remember that Walking Dead game by Telltale, right? You know, the first season? Remember how much you cared for little Clementine? It's exactly like that. There's also a part in this chapter where you're introduced to a simple upgrading and crafting system. There are these workbenches scattered around the place that offer Amicia a chance to upgrade various parts of her kit. These upgrades vary from the string of her sling to the pouch that she stores the pebbles in, all offering different kinds of benefits. The visual style of each thing you upgrade changes too, which is a really nice touch. The materials for these upgrades are found everywhere, but the rare ones can be hidden quite well, often requiring some serious additional risk or puzzle solving to access. I'd suggest you get them if you can though, because getting all the upgrades in a single playthrough requires collecting almost every single rare resource you come across. The materials you gather also feed into the on-the-fly crafting system, in which Amicia levels her alchemy skill to 100 and can make different types of chemical products to fling with her sling. Do be careful though, the materials that you use to craft these throwables are the exact same ones you use to make the permanent upgrades at a workbench. So if you craft too many or use them unnecessarily, you might forfeit some late game upgrades. A particularly handy one that you can get early on is called the Ignifer. This handy dandy fiery doodad can ignite flammable sources from afar, forging a path of light which might be the only defense from a threat far larger than any silly Inquisition soldiers. Of course, I'm talking about the rats. The black, bloody rats. Perhaps the most technically impressive part of the entire game. Thousands and thousands of them scrambling over each other, swarming and writhing to get at their next meal with their little teeth and ravenous eyes of red. And the best part? Doesn't destroy your frame rate at all. Whatever tech Asobo Studios used for these guys has some seriously cool implications in other games. These bitey bastards must be responsible for the plague spreading at breakneck speed. The repulsive rodents have only one weakness: light, and they hate it. They squeal and scream whenever a flame hits their sensitive little eyes, and it's the only thing stopping Amicia and Hugo becoming a midnight snack for the tidal wave of the little buggers. Forget Warhammer Vermintide, this is the real Vermintide right here. The circle of light from your torch repels them like magnets of the opposite polarity, and the musical scores that accompany these sections filled with rats are perfect for them. Many rapid strings firing off for as many tiny predators are trying to nip at your heels. It's panic-inducing in a moment where your cool head is the only thing keeping you alive. It's sublime. If sneaking past armed soldiers was one half of the game, then navigating a nautical sea of nasties is the other half. Clever use of light is essential to make your way through, and while most of the puzzles are fairly intuitive, some are real head scratchers. There's a fair few ways to utilise light. Obviously there's your bog standard torches that will burn indefinitely, but these are few and far between and have to be left behind eventually. Bundles of thin sticks can be found that will burn for a short time, and they're capable of lighting other flammable sources, but if you dawdle too long and your flame burns out in the middle of a ravenous swarm, you are done. There's quite a few nifty ways you can deter the hordes. There are some pushable carts with braziers in them, turnable podiums with a bright lantern inside, and the aforementioned Ignifer craftable that allows you to light flammable sources at range. Using all of the tools at your disposal and still only scraping through by an inch is an absolutely thrilling experience, and there's no doubt your enemy will show you no mercy if you screw up. The majority of these gameplay sections are really awesome, but there are some bullshit moments where you swear to God you are in the light, but they get you right on the edge of a flame's radius. I suppose those particular rats are just super hungry? Naturally, the brother and sister go through a lot of dark shit together. They have their ups and downs, they fall out and make up again. You know, they're siblings, they're kids, it's what they do. But seeing a strong bond grow between them, seeing how they protect each other with a fierce familial instinct is endearing to watch and makes me feel all fuzzy inside. Especially considering how they were totally isolated from one another since Hugo's birth. You will meet some other characters along the way as well, some of which will band together with you to form a small community that's quite charming. That's all I'm going to say on this sparkling hidden gem. I really don't want to spoil any more for you, and I sincerely hope I've at least inspired you to try this game out. It's easy to play it on the Xbox Game Pass, or just get it on Steam. Try it for an hour, you can always refund it if it's really not your cup of tea, and that's perfectly okay. Let's just try and send the developers a message that strong narrative single-player games like this have a place in the modern gaming market, and a pretty big one, if that. If the A Plague Tale thing becomes a series, I'll be damn certain to play the next one, but no pre-orders though. In the hallowed words of Total Biscuit, thou shalt not pre-order. I want to give you a sincere thank you just for watching this video. You are the best, really. I especially want to give a very, very, very special thank you to Alexia, who is my first ever patron. Thank you so much, Alexia. Every view, every like, every subscription helps more than you can know, but Alexia's gone that extra step to support these videos. You are a legend. They say you always remember your first. If anyone else wants to join these legendary ranks, the link to my Patreon is in the description. I'm still really new to properly writing scripts and producing a more concentrated style of content with a more deliberate focus. I'm just grateful as hell that you all stick around for it. Right, with that soppy nonsense out of the way, how about we go grab some coffee, eh? Bye for now.